Okay, so I wasn't planning on making a floss tube until the end of June, but I figured I might forget what I learned in class at Embroiderers Guild of America. I'm part of the Seagull Lily chapter, and this month we did our meeting was the coloring craze, transferring coloring book pictures to fabric so you can color with fiber. But before I start on the class, I wanted to show off my sorry, didn't mean to bump the camera. I want to show off my final finished object, and it's got dog fluff on it. Beagles contributed hair. So anyway, this is Mirabilia's Christmas Elf Fairy. It's framed in a standard Hobby Lobby frame. The Hobby Lobby frame did have glass in it, but I have a husband who knows how to use a knife very well, and he cut the glass out for me. So I pinned it to the, I also cut archival mat board to pin the piece to, and I did all the pinning and got my lines fairly straight while watching Stash Queen Katie's video number 75, and it went really fast because I finished the pinning and the framing before she finished the video. So that's one object down, and now that I've showed it to you, I can put it away. It's going to go in the Christmas closet. By the way, this is Stasha, and I'm sorry I didn't say my name at the beginning. So starting with transferring from a coloring book to fabric. And I know all of a sudden there's a bunch of people going, wait, copyright! You have to own the coloring book. Okay? You can't just borrow one from the library, and why a library has coloring books doesn't make sense to me, because that right there is just begging you to photocopy the pages, which is a violation of copyright. But you need to own the coloring book. And everything I'm doing today comes from the Calm coloring book, which I got at Barnes & Noble. The next thing you do is you need to pick a pattern in the coloring book. You want something that has nice large spaces like this one. You don't want something like this, which has lots of small spaces, little tiny curly cues, because that's not going to be fun to stitch on. You want nice open spaces like that one. I have picked a pattern here. You can see underneath. There are multiple ways you can transfer the pattern. You can transfer it using a light board, a light table, which I'm going to do today, or if you don't have a light table, tape it to a window. You'll see I've used the blue tape because that doesn't leave residue on my light board. If you don't have access to a window or a light board, graphite paper. I got this at Hobby Lobby, and Walmart's also carries it. This one was from Walmart. And you just lay this down on your fabric, and then you trace the pattern on top of it. So if I were using the transfer paper, I would just lay my pattern on top, and then just take a normal pen or pencil and just trace the lines, and that will transfer the tracing paper to the fabric. Tracing paper goes a long way. You can see on here that there's a lot of lines. I don't know if you can see or not on that. There are a lot of lines that have been used. I did my entire Doctor Who quilt with one piece of tracing paper. So, and there's 12 blocks in that. If you don't want to take the time to trace over the pattern, and there are some nice coloring book patterns you can get free online, you can print it onto transfer sheets and then iron it onto your fabric. So basically, they tell you please to read the detailed instructions sheet, but you print your image. They suggest you mirror it, but this is a coloring book page, so who cares if you mirror it or not, you're just going to stitch over it anyway. Trim your image, preheat your iron to the highest cotton setting, do not use steam, and then iron it onto your fabric. Now, when my mother first taught me this technique back in the 70s, Yeah, I've been around that long. Um, anyway, when I first learned this in the 70s, there were things called transfer pencils where you would go over, you would just go over the image with the transfer pencil, and then you would iron it onto you would iron it onto your fabric that way. I can't find a transfer pencil for the life of me. So the other teacher at the class was Carolyn Barrani of Tapestry, and I'll put the link to her website. She's a designer and does some really, really cool crewel embroidery projects. I would love to get her Jacobean bunny or her candy cottontail, but right now those kits are out of my budget, but someday they'll be back, they'll be in there. But she uses sulky solvy paper. You'll see this is kind of a clear paper. And then what she does is she uses a Sharpie marker and then just colors the lines. I'll just show you, it's easier to show you. So in class, this was the coloring book page I got, and we were using the sulky solvy. So there's my pattern on the sulky solvy, and you can see I'm using multiple threads on this. These are French knots in wool, French knots in regular cotton fiber. Next up will be French knots in a silk pearl, and then I'm going to do just a standard pearl. So, but that's the one I did on the sulky solvy paper. So, and see, nice big open spaces. I didn't transfer all the little shading dots because they're fine for coloring, not so great on the fabric. So just like this pattern, you can see a little bit underneath is, it's kind of busy, so we're not going to transfer everything on here, but we'll transfer just enough so that you can get the general outline pattern, and then you can fill in whatever stitches you want. The fabric is just a plain white muslin. I believe it's a 200 thread count, and you can transfer using a lot of different items. I have cloth markers, washout cloth markers, pencils. I've got a standard graphite pencil that also works if you are going to be covering up the area. Archival ink so it doesn't bleed. Again, only if you're going to be covering up the area. Disappearing ink, which also comes with its own eraser. So, and just a plain blue Crayola pencil. Again, if you're going to be covering up areas. So I'm going to go ahead and use the chalk marker on this. So I've got the fabric, I've got where the design centered. On my muslin, I just did a zigzag around the edges because I don't own a serger. So I'm just going to start going around here. And you can see it goes pretty quickly. And I'm going to go ahead and film while I'm doing this, but then I will probably edit a lot of it out so that you don't have to watch me do the whole thing. However, I am going to say this much. If you don't have a light table, for years I didn't have a light table. I finally got one for my birthday. My wonderful husband gave it to me as a birthday present. You'll see I didn't get the lines exactly right there, but hey, you got the general idea. If you're a perfectionist, you would probably go back, smooth out those lines, and do it over again. To me, it's close enough. You're going to be putting fabric, you're going to be putting fiber on top of it anyway. So, if I really wanted to, I could tape the fabric down to the light board as well. But before I had the light board, I would just tape patterns up to the window and do them that way. Just draw from the upper edge of the window It kind of has to be light outside when you use the window though. Okay, now this one, I'm not going to put the beads in. I'm just going to do a line around the outer edge. If I really want to, I can put beads or French knots or something to represent the circles when I actually stitch on it. Because I'm going to keep the coloring book pattern in my stitching bag with me. So I'm going to put in a few of these circles. I'm probably not going to put all of them in. But I'm going to put in a few of these background circles. Yeah, it's quiet. You get to hear the noise from outside. Get to hear my dog as he flops down on the floor. It's amazing. He can be noisy when he wants to and quiet when he wants to. Put this one in over here. Anyway, you get the general idea of how this works. Okay, somehow or other I've ended up with an extra line. Oh, that one goes there. Hey, that's okay, you're working from whatever. So the one thing that I would say is this is for your own personal use. Since you are taking someone else's design and transferring it to fabric, these really should not be sold without permission from the coloring book publisher or author. And while we're talking about it, maybe I won't edit it. Maybe you'll just get to listen to me talk during this. Well, maybe we'll edit out the quiet parts. But Tracy Horner from Ink Circles has a coloring book out. It's called Peace in Art or Piece of Art. I'm not 100% sure. But it's Peace as in P-E-A-C-E, as in calm, quiet. And it is available on Amazon, so if you just go to Amazon and look up Tracy Horner, she has one. I don't personally own it. It is on order though. But I'm sure there would be some good mandala designs that you could transfer. But I would probably ask Tracy first, because she is you have easy access to her. Some people you don't have easy access to. Okay, I am not going to do all of the tulips. I'm just going to do part of them. I'm not going to do the wave type things behind the tulips. But hopefully that's given you an idea on how to do this. So if you wanted to do it for yourself, I would love to see if you do this. I would love to see how yours turns out. And for those of you watching this, since I know I have more whips than will last me a lifetime, and as pretty as this is, I know I do not have time to do this one. I am going to do a giveaway for this sample that we just did here in the class. So if anybody would like this, I will send you the fabric, the coloring book page, because I'm not keeping if I don't have it, the coloring book page needs to go with it. And if you want, I'll even throw in a few fibers from my stash. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the board off just because I know that is really messing with the lights. So anyway, with the light board off, you can see that's what, actually, I'll take that off. So that's what the pattern looks like when you go to stitch on it, which means I'm probably going to take a line there because that line didn't work out too well. Probably going to arch that a little bit more. So once you take it off, you can make a few modifications as you see fit. I'm going to add a little bit more there. So now you have a pattern. I'll probably go back and put a few more of the circles and around the outside edges after we're done filming here. So now you have a pattern that you can do embroidery stitches on. So there is no stitch guide. This is where you get to go wild. This is where you get to color with your fibers. So I mentioned earlier that fibers have different textures. You have wools, you have standard pearl cottons, you have that's a silk pearl. This is where you can take all of those fibers that you have floating around your stash that you're like, yeah, this is left over from another project, but I just really can't bring myself to throw it out. All those leftover kit fibers, this is what you do with them. This is something that you can do with all the leftover fibers, and just, you know, if you're doing this picture here, you've got some nice greens here. You could do roses in whatever color you wanted. These don't all have to be leaves. You could make them into, maybe it's a stained glass pattern behind the roses, and you just pick a couple that are leaves, and you know, just like you would color in a coloring book, there are no rules. So stitches, choose your own stitches. You can do cross stitches. These here are French knots. I'm going to probably do satin stitches or a split stitch. For the flower petals, I'm going to do a long stitch with a lazy daisy, just a single lazy daisy, or a single chain stitch for the little stamen things. And who knows, I could change my mind and decide to do something else entirely. May or may not get back stitched, depends on how each flower looks. I have back stitch lines if I need to follow, and if I forget what it looks like because I've stitched over my pattern, I still have the coloring book page that I can use. So one thing I may have forgotten to tell you about the sulky salvia is when you stitch over it, when you're all done, you cut away the large pieces from the outside edges, and then you wash your piece. And this is water soluble. It dissolves in water. And Carolyn did tell us that you have to wash it for quite a while, as in maybe 15-20 minutes, to get all of the starchy residue out. She said the longest she's ever left anything to soak was at least an hour. So anyway, if you don't want to transfer coloring book pages but would like to learn more about crewel embroidery, Carolyn has some really great patterns on her website. She also has some great kits and really good instructions. Her website is tapistree.com. That's Tapistree, and I'll put a link to it in the comments. Thanks everybody for letting me share the class, and the main reason I did this is so that I don't forget how to do it and I have someplace to go back to and check. So thanks for your time, and I'll see you for my regular check-in later in June.